Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Lunch Update, our program that helps you stay curious, connected, informed, live, and in real time. And today we're live in DC. This conversation, like all Lunch Update programs, are made possible by our presenting sponsor, Perkins Coie, and also a thank you to our Accelerate sponsors, Baker Tilly and Easy Office Products. As always, these episodes are, although live, they are recorded and available at madisonbiz.com. You can log in a little bit later this afternoon. If there's anything that you want to relive, share, have questions about, please make sure you go to madisonbiz.com. But also, as we do from time to time, this episode is being simulcast on Wisconsin Eye. And so if you are joining us on Wisconsin Eye, welcome to Lunch Update. Today is a special edition of Lunch Update. As I mentioned, we're coming to you live from Washington, D.C., where we have spent much of this week as part of our 8th annual D.C. Meets Madison fly-in. On Tuesday afternoon, we met with the editors and reporters from Bloomberg to showcase Madison's VR talent recruitment technology and to discuss the talent trends and the talent challenges that are in front of Madison, which we are positioning as a place of national opportunity. Then on Wednesday morning, along with our media partner at wispolitics.com, we heard from polling expert Ken Goldstein about polling trends and the current state of the presidential rate and key congressional races and Wisconsin's continued role as a battleground state. And lucky for us, we will hear more from Ken coming up shortly. We followed that with a roundtable discussion with the chiefs of staff from all of our congressional offices. It was one of our favorite events is when we're able to bring the chiefs in and have them sit round table style over lunch with our delegation. And then throughout the week, we had a number of productive meetings with our statewide elected delegations. We met with 6 of our elected officials. Things that I would highlight, key issues. We talked about the talent imperative that's in front of us in Greater Madison. We highlighted the Chamber's Belong agenda. We talked about appropriations and approval for the Regional Technology and Innovation Hub program, particularly focused on Wisconsin's Phase 2 application. We discussed transportation and infrastructure improvements that needed to be accommodated for this region's continued growth. And then we also brought forward some suggestions on how we can modernize our immigration law, particularly as it applies to those in the Dreamer status. We also met today with Secretary Pete Buttigieg and his team to discuss all of the transportation issues. So that's rail, car, transit, infrastructure, BRT, airport, all of those things came up. And we had a great hour plus meeting with leadership at DOT, including the secretary. And then finally, we hosted our legislative reception at Brayburn Office Building, where we brought together members of Congress, their staff, and just expats from Madison and Wisconsin, alumni, and those just generally interested about what's going on, and some people who are just interested in getting some free beer. But we had hundreds of attendees. It was a great night. Weather was a little warm, but cooperated, but a great way to celebrate Madison and its economy and our businesses. All of this was possible because of our founding partner, WPS Health Solutions, and our presenting partner, Alliant Energy, but also many thanks to the University of Wisconsin-Madison and Accuray, American Family Insurance, Epic, Frank Productions, Madison Gas and Electric, Michael Best, Supreme Structures, and True Stage, and then our food and beverage partners, Nuglaris Brewing Company and The Firm, and our media partner, wispolitics.com. As I said, today we're going to welcome 3 experts for a conversation with key issues that we addressed this week with our delegation. We will hear from coming up UW-Madison's Vice Chancellor for University Relations, Charlie Hoslet, and the Managing Director of University Research Park and our former board chair and also a board member of the Chamber, Aaron Olver. But first, it's my pleasure to welcome Ken Goldstein. Ken serves as the Senior Vice President for Survey Research and Institutional Policy at the American Association of Universities. You may recognize the name. He previously was a political science professor at UW-Madison, where he won a significant amount of awards and accomplishments, including the Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Teaching. He was also a professor of politics at the University of San Francisco. He's a consultant for ABC News Election Night Decision Team and has worked on network election night coverage at every U.S. federal election since 1988. Welcome, Ken. Thanks for being here with us.
Great. Thanks to be here, Zach.
So let's start at a high level. So let's start with the presidential election. What are some of the trends that you're seeing nationally? What are you as a pollster paying attention to? And then maybe at the end of that, after you tell us what you're paying attention, what should the candidates be paying attention to as their path to victory?
Yeah, so it's little bit challenging because my first thing I'm going to answer you, it's a really, really close election. And so you're thinking, well, why did everyone have to drag themselves onto this Zoom for that? But I don't know if you're picking it up here during your time in DC. There does seem to be sort of these cartoonish extremes where there's some people who actually say, listen, this is going to end up not being a competitive election. You have a president whose job approval rating is in the, mid 30s, maybe at the most the high 30s or 40. This is, he's not going to win. And then all the problems, I hate the word, but optics of this presidency. There's another camp that says there's a clear anti-MAGA majority in this country, and we saw that in a number of races in 2022. And eventually, the polls you're gonna have some separation in the polls, and Biden's gonna come out to a lead. I think neither of those are true, and so I'm going to say what I think is pretty Captain Obvious, which is that it is a jump ball. How can we make that a little bit smarter? One of the reasons why it's a jump ball, even though Joe Biden's job approval numbers are mired in the mid 30s to at the most the high 30s, is because there is a group of about 20% of the electorate who disapproves of Joe Biden, who is still willing to vote for him. So typically, and I know we probably have lots of people on here who run campaigns, that if someone disapproves of an incumbent, they're going to vote against that incumbent, with some variance, but relatively little variance. Here, that is the swing group in this election. Those people who somewhat disapprove of the job that Joe Biden's doing. That's the swing group in the country. That's the swing group in Wisconsin. If you look at the excellent Marquette University poll, or you look at other less good polls in Wisconsin, that is the story. That is the story you see. One other quick thing about those somewhat disapprovers, which is something else we could discuss. What's interesting about those somewhat disapprovers is the ones who are absolutely most likely to vote, they actually favor Joe Biden a little bit. It's people who are less likely to vote in general and less likely to vote among these somewhat disapprovers who are more supportive of Donald Trump.
Are there any slivers that, when you look at the Wisconsin data specifically, are there anything that you say, even if it's a small demographic or a small piece, but you say that's the thing we should be paying attention to? That's what interests you. Are there, if we as maybe more passive participants in the election, or who are interested in what kind of slivers are you pulling? What kind of threads are you pulling to say, even if it's not big today, it's going to be the thing that defines the election 3 weeks out, 4 weeks out?
Yeah. So slivers is the exact correct word. I'm gonna steal that now in future presentations. Wisconsin is so close, right? You have Donald Trump barely winning it in 2016 and Joe Biden barely winning it in 2020. You basically have a 50,000 vote change that makes it from a narrow Trump victory to a narrow Biden victory. So the easy answer is, when it's that close, every sliver matters. Usually the stuff we don't care about, that's just a little bit, that's not going to matter. When you're talking about such razor thin margins, everything matters. But let me talk about two things which I would pay attention to in Wisconsin, and not just saying this because I'm talking to a Dane County crowd. In 2012, everyone said, wow, look at all those votes the Democrats are generating out of Dane County. There is no way the Democrats can get more votes out of Dane County.
Thanks.
And when I'm saying more votes, I mean the advantage between the Democrat and Republican. And then 2016, listen, for me, if I would have said to you, wow, Democrats increased their margin out of Dane County and Republicans didn't increase their margin out of the WOW counties, you would have said Hillary Clinton easily won Wisconsin. But she didn't, because those rural counties overperformed for Donald Trump. So in 2016, Dane did even better for Dems than 2012. And then people said in 2020, there's no way that Dane can perform better for Democrats. But they did, right? And it's a combination of the county is getting bigger and the vote totals are even more Democratic. So one sliver I'm paying attention to is, are there another 20, 30,000 votes net that Democrats can get out of Dane County? The other slivers I'm looking at, are there another 30, 40, 50,000 votes that Republicans, that Donald Trump can get out of the rural areas? But the big thing I'm looking at, and again, we could pay attention to, like, young voters on the isthmus, right? Everything sort of matters when, see, I still remember my little Madison history there. Everything matters when it's this narrow. But I think the bigger group of voters to pay attention to are Black voters in the city of Milwaukee. None of us are that old, but we can all be old enough to remember when that was the game, right? How many votes could Democrats come out of Milwaukee with? You see perhaps a little bit of a decrease in turnout among Black people. And Black people in Milwaukee, Black voters in Milwaukee, are still overwhelmingly going to support Joe Biden. There's no doubt about that. But it matters whether they vote for him 85-15, 90-10, or 95-5. I think Barack Obama probably won the city of Milwaukee 98-2, 97-3. So if you think about that, for every 100 votes, that's 94 that Obama generated, had an advantage of. If it's 85-15, that's 70. That can make a difference of tens of thousands of votes in a state. So there's a couple little slivers and a sliver plus to look at.
So, I mean, I guess one of the questions too is it's not the only race on the ballot, right? And so as we look, one level down ballot on this, we've got the Senate race with Eric Hovde and the incumbent Tammy Baldwin. Eric Hovde as the challenger has to know it's tough to beat Tammy. Right? She won her last election by a fair margin. Do you think this is one of the races to watch nationally, or is that being overblown?
No, I think it's certainly a race to watch nationally, because although Tammy is unequivocally the favorite in a race, what did she win the last time by? 7 or 8, right? I mean, that's probably the biggest landslide in the state of Wisconsin in the last, oh my God. I mean, I can't remember. I can't remember anyone winning by more than that in the entire time I was in the state, and I lived there since 2000. So by definition, with such a close state, that Senate state is going to be in play. And she clearly is going to outperform Joe Biden. And the question is by how much she is going to outperform Joe Biden. What probably will benefit the Biden campaign is having her on the ballot. Not so much that people are going, oh, I like Tammy Baldwin, I also like Joe Biden. It's that you will have a mature, sophisticated, well-funded campaign with a mobilization effort. And, all those votes that Tammy's dragging out should also be Biden votes.
One of the things that we told Bloomberg when we met with them was, Madison's deepening blue, right? So the last statewide election, the differential was 82-18 in the statewide Supreme Court race with, major implications on policy and state law. And Madison's, to your first question, is how do you get more votes out of Dane County? Well, they're proving that they can, although I hear the caution flag you're throwing, which is, does that counteract the loss of Black African-American voters in Milwaukee? But if you were both Hovde or Trump's campaign strategist, there's still votes to be had here. And we can remember a time where it was 65-35 in Dane County. Republicans are going to win Dane County, but you could generate twice as many votes, even if you still lost 20 years ago versus today. What would your approach to be in Dane County if you were on the Hovde campaign or the Trump campaign?
Yeah. You're a campaign person. We got a bunch of other campaign person. It's a great question. I think a mistake that campaigns often make is they consider areas of the state like a state in the electoral college, right? It's like, it's not like Dane County is like California, where Republicans actually don't care by how much they lose it, right? It matters by how much they lose it. I mean, going back to, ancient history, Al Gore didn't spend enough money in the Panhandle in Florida because he knew he was going to lose it. But like those votes still count in the entire state of Florida. So listen, Dane County is very different once you get 4 miles from the University of Wisconsin Memorial Union. There are Republican votes there. The trade-off that campaigns make is, which I don't actually think is a trade-off here because Democrats will be so fully engaged, is sometimes you think, let's not go there because I don't even want people to know there's a campaign and I don't want high turnout there. I think the people in Dane County is going to know there's a presidential election going on and the Democrats are going to be trying to harvest every vote out of there. So to your point, listen, if Republicans can shave a couple percentage points off there, the math becomes much more challenging for Democrats across the state.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So switching gears to issues, and so as we wrap up, final question here. From an issues perspective, what do you think the issues are going to be that define the national race? I mean, we hear a lot, right? Every pundit's got to pay attention to this issue. This is the issue that's going to break Trump, or this is the issue that's going to break Biden. What are the national issues that you think are truly pivotal in this election? And which ones are just overstated?
So I think it is generally an issueless election. But of course, paraphrasing another president, depends how you define issues, right? I do not see the upcoming presidential debates as a duel of position papers on what we should be doing about inflation or international relations or immigration. That said, there are challenges for the Biden administration in the issue environment, and there's also these data out that, they ask people, is the economy in recession? Is the stock market in decline? And people are getting it wrong objectively about the economy. So the vibe out there is negative. That's a challenge for Biden. The immigration is also a real problem for Biden. And I think that's an issue that generates Republican votes in the state of Wisconsin. I think abortion is an issue that helps Democrats. And Republicans are in a bit of a mild panic about that. And I do think that could make a difference at the margin in a state like Wisconsin. But in an issueless election, it is the steps or missteps of candidates and the personalities of the candidates. As a political scientist, I'm supposed to say, yeah, the debate's probably not a big deal. Let me end with, I ended with the Captain Obvious of saying I thought the race was really close. I will end with the other Captain Obvious. That debate is going to be really important. I think this race could get frozen depending on what happens in that late June debate.
All right, well, maybe we'll circle back to you after that debate and see where we're at. We certainly appreciate, the continued tethered relationship to the university. I know that your work, even here in DC, still trickles down to the university in meaningful and positive ways as you help research universities around the country understand what the political landscape looks like. And so appreciated you when you were at UW, appreciate you now for what you're helping us with. And thanks for spending some time with us, Ken.
Great, and I appreciate all you. And then I know you're going to hear from, everyone says in Washington, my very good friend, but truly my very good friend, Charlie Hoslet, who's given a life to the state and the university and moving on in a little bit. So I look forward to hearing what he says as well.
Great. Thanks, Ken.
Yeah.
With that, let's welcome in Charlie Hoslet, who is currently the Vice Chancellor for University Relations at UW-Madison. I think I can count the remaining days on two hands. His previous roles at UW include the Associate Vice Chancellor for Government and Corporate Affairs. He was the Managing Director and founder of the Office of Corporate Relations. From 1997 to 2003, he was responsible for directing all state governmental relations efforts at the university. And before that, Charlie served as the Executive Assistant, which was the #3 position at the Wisconsin Department of Affairs. I held that role at Commerce. We were constantly trying to change the name so that we could truly identify, but essentially think senior policy leader at Veteran Affairs. He was the Deputy Legal Counsel and the Chief Legal Counsel for then Governor Tommy Thompson. All right, Charlie, welcome. Thanks for spending some time with us. I know you're probably winding down and thinking about is it 8 days, 9 days? How many more days do we have?
So 8 days. Week from tomorrow is my last day.
Okay, well, I appreciate you spending some time with us. As always, university leadership was well represented in DC this week. We certainly appreciate your team coming out in support of the collective advocacy, which includes federal research and innovation funding, what we're calling tech hubs. So tell the audience a little bit about what the legislative priorities have been for UW-Madison at the federal level.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to follow my good friend Ken Goldstein. And I'm sorry I couldn't make this trip, but I know we've got folks, Ben Miller and others are out there. So we've got a number of things that we look at the federal level, but let me mention three main research initiatives that are important to us as we look towards the fiscal year 25 budget. The first, of course, is the tech hubs. Wisconsin, of course, one of 31 regions selected for a tech hub designation out of 370 or so applicants. So not very easy to get, but a number of organizations and people, including people here at UW, really put the shoulder into the wheel, and we were able to get that designation. So we're now competing for the phase 2 funding for that, which has been appropriated, but nothing's been appropriated beyond that. So it could be that you basically have one round of tech hubs, and then nothing further. And if we don't get funding this go around, that's a problem. We do feel very good about it, and I know you all have been talking about it as well. But still, that's an important one. A second area is we just received a $150 million grant, the largest grant ever from the National Institutes of Health, NIH, to lead a study by the Alzheimer's disease research centers across the country. It's a study aimed at giving us a greater understanding of what happens in the brain to cause Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia, conditions that too many of us are familiar with from friends or loved ones who have experienced it. We are a longtime leader in this kind of research, and we're excited to see what sort of developments and treatments might come from the study. But again, it's the sort of thing that needs continual funding through the upcoming federal budgets if we're going to see any real results. And I also mentioned something called the Panther Initiative, which stands for Physics-Based Neutralization of Threats to Human Tissues and Organs. Really, this is a consortium funded by the Office of Naval Research that's increasing our understanding of concussions and other traumatic injuries. Think things that happen in the military, think football players, at the high school or college level. And so we've got a group that's focused on that. And the last thing, Zach, that I'll mention is funding for the National Science Foundation. The federal FY24 budget cut NSF funding by 5%, almost $500 million, which is the first time it's seen a decrease in almost 10 years. We're worried that the cuts that happened last year are going to have major impacts on discovery and innovation, and we need to see Congress reinvest in that. And just for some context, the UW-Madison gets about $130 million a year in NSF funding, and it makes up about 15% of our total research awards. So it's really important that funding continues to grow.
Appreciate that, Charlie. Thanks for highlighting those three issues. We kind of lured you here to talk about the priorities of the university, but really we wanted to also spend some time reflecting with you. And as I spent some time, you and I have worked together, and I've been proud to call you a friend for, I almost have lost track how many years it's been.
Right.
But as I reflected on the flight out here on your career, one word kept rising to top of mind. That was partner. I mean, I think back, you've been instrumental in bringing people together and groups together around many shared objectives, and whether that was objectives for the state, objectives for university, objectives for Dane County and Greater Madison, and then industry partnerships. I mean, I think as we think about pathways into the university, and not always easy, but way easier than it used to be. You were instrumental and led the Office of Corporate Relations that we now call the Office of Business Engagement. As you think back on your time and you think about that role of connector, partner, the partnership maker, what comes to mind for you as you consider specifically, what the Office of Corporate Relations, now OBE, the Business Engagement, has done to build private sector partnerships and relationships with businesses, outside researchers? How do you reflect on that
Yeah.
change?
So the first thing that comes to mind is I consider my time at the Office of Corporate Relations, which is roughly 2003 to 2010 or so, as my sabbatical from politics. I had been in, as you know, been in politics before in the governor's office and here, and then since then. But it gave me an opportunity to get out around the state, meet people like you, people, members of chambers of commerce around the state, economic development organizations, and lots of companies. And like now, or I should say like then, now OBE still is an entry point, a single entry point for companies that want to take advantage of the resources of the university, but they're not quite sure where to go or who to talk to or even what resources exist. And so I'm very proud of the fact that over this 20 years, there have been literally thousands of companies in Wisconsin and beyond that we've helped do everything from recruit students for employment to get their employees connected with professional development programs, connecting them with WARF and all the technology licensing opportunities, connecting them with faculty for research or technical assistance or what have you. And a lot of those, of course, are sort of, what I'll call one-off or single sorts of things. But we've also got a good number of partnerships that are across schools and colleges and over many years. A good example is American Family Insurance. We're in the midst of a 10-year, $40 million partnership agreement with American Family that gives them access to all of the things I just mentioned and more. And it has been great for the university and great for American Family. And we're doing things like that with Kohler, with Land's End, with PPG, with Train, with Kimberly-Clark. And so as I look back at what we started in 2003 to where it's become and the impact that we've had, I feel pretty good about that.
You should. I agree. I think those are great stories, but also testaments to a vision decades ago that I think is still bearing fruit and will bear fruit into the future. As I reflected on your career as well, I thought about all the intersections of the great leaders you've been able to work with: governors, DOA secretaries, chancellors, local leaders, state leaders, federal leaders. It was kind of amazed as I try to map out all the different places you've been and the people you've worked with. As you think about those tremendous leaders, what have you learned? I mean, are there any other things that stand out to you of lessons learned that you could share on this platform?
Yeah, I'll just mention a couple. As you know, I've had the privilege of working for a governor, a state cabinet secretary, 5 different chancellors at UW-Madison, or 6 if you count David Ward twice. And I've learned a lot from each of them. But I guess some things that stand out, resonate the most. One is you need to have a vision, and you need to be able to articulate clearly not just what the vision is, but also why it's important for people to follow and get behind it. And Governor Thompson, of course, was tremendously good at that. David Ward was, Becky Blank was, and Jennifer Mnuchin is as well. And I would point to the initiative that she announced not too long ago, the RISE initiative, RISE Wisconsin. And so it gets people excited, and that, as I say, sort of gets everybody moving in the same direction. That's important. I think a second one, and this took me longer to operationalize for myself than I'd like, is the importance of delegation and empowering others. And by doing so, it gives you both the flexibility, whether you're a chancellor or somebody in my position, to work on the really important things, the really highly strategic things. But it also gives the people that work for you the ability to engage in issues that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. And so that's a nice opportunity as well. And then lastly, I would just say, strong leaders mentor and coach those who work for them. And this means both sharing what you did well, but also sharing where you fell short. And none of the leaders that I've worked for have been shy about telling you when things didn't go well, but they also were very good about saying, and here's what you might do differently next time. So that's the difference between constructive criticism and just plain criticism.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Charlie. I really appreciate the reflection on all those that you worked with. Great advice. this is an advocacy focused program, so maybe a little crystal ball. So we talked about the past, maybe just looking forward. You think about everything that you've helped build, positioning UW-Madison for success. What do you hope for after you leave? I mean, what does the next road forward look like for UW-Madison?
So obviously we want to keep the campus strong and healthy. We're what, the top number 15 public research university in the country. We're number 8 in terms of research expenditures nationally among both publics and privates. We want to not just maintain that, but continue to grow it. To do that, I would say, we need some things both from the federal government and the state government in terms of funding. It takes resources to maintain that level of excellence. And yet the resources are tremendous, both in terms of creating a talented workforce, the next generation of leaders, creating the innovation that's going to drive our economy in the state and in the country going forward. So it's a great ROI. And so hoping for more funding over time and more flexibility. We're a $3.7 billion enterprise. This is really more of a state government issue, yet we operate under the same rules and operational policies that state agencies do and other campuses do. And we're just different. We're not better, but we're different. And we need the operational flexibility to do things a little bit differently. And the last thing I would say, Zach, is we need support. Right now, higher education is under attack, as you know, and it's important for people to hear their elected leaders and their policymakers talking about why it's important to have a strong university, why it's important to have a healthy UW-Madison, what it does for the state, for the business community, for people in their communities. Right now, we have less of that than I would like, and I'm hoping that over time, which isn't to say people shouldn't be constructively critical, but we don't hear enough of, in my view, what's going well and why it's important.
So we asked you to reflect on this final question. We asked you to reflect on, what you've learned from great leaders. I put you among those great leaders that I've had an opportunity and a pleasure to work with over decades. What advice do you have handing forward to your successor? You have 8 more days. The university chancellor's announced the search. I suspect by the fall they'll have somebody new into your seat. What advice do you have for the next vice chancellor of university relations?
Yeah. So the search is up and running, just so people are aware. Search committee has been formed. There's a search firm that's helping to find good, strong candidates. If you know of somebody who might be interested, please point them to the UW-Madison website and they can find the job description and how to apply. I think my advice would be a couple of things. Could give lots of advice, but in the minute or two that we've got left, I would say come in and understand the importance of this institution. Really get to know it. There's not a day that goes by that I don't learn something new about what we're doing in terms of research or an area that we're studying, and again the importance that it has to our communities, to our state, to the world. And you need to, particularly if you aren't from within the institution or what have you, or not really familiar with it, you need to embed yourself in that a bit to really be able then to go downtown or out to Washington and say, let me tell you why this is important. And the other thing that I would say is if you're familiar with Colin Powell's 13 Rules of Leadership. I first saw those in the mid-1990s when his autobiography came out, and I refer back to them periodically, and they really are incredibly useful and are things that I've used and thought about and have helped me chart my path over time. So I would encourage my successor and anybody else to go out and look at Colin Powell's 13 Rules of Leadership.
Great. Well, Charlie, I know this won't be the last time that I will see you next week. I look forward to celebrating and maybe a little roasting as well. But I just want to thank you publicly here with our membership and on Wisconsin Eye for everything that you have given to the state of Wisconsin and all the different forms and facets. You've been a true blessing to the state and a great leader and a great friend, and we'll miss you.
Yeah, thank you so very much. I appreciate it. It's bittersweet, of course, but it's a good time to turn the page to the next chapter and see what the universe has in store for me.
Great. All right. Well, Charlie, thanks, and we'll see you next week. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
All right, and then our final guest joining me live here, so in weekend update style, SNL style, is Aaron Olver. Hello, Aaron.
Hi.
Aaron was appointed Managing Director of the University Research Park in 2014. He worked as the Wisconsin at the Department of Commerce from 2003 to 2011. First as executive assistant, which you heard me say with Charlie, a position I also held at Commerce that we tried to change the name, and now it is changed actually. Then as deputy secretary, and ultimately as my boss as the secretary of Commerce. After leaving Commerce, he became the director of economic development, the city of Madison. He also spent time in the private sector, including the management consulting as a management consultant at McKinsey & Company in Chicago. And he happens to be a member of our board and the immediate past chair of the board of directors. So welcome to DC.
Thanks, Zach.
So your time on the board, including the leadership role as a chair, the chamber prioritized federal policy, particularly to unlock innovation and see how place-based economic development could work. We talked a lot about that this week when we were talking to congressional offices. There were a lot that doubted a program like this would even be possible. We were told pre-pandemic, no one's going to put $10 billion into anything in this country. There's no money, and here we are.
Yep.
So as someone who follows the program and the project and is helping lead the proposal that's in front of us, what do you think the factors were that enabled us to get to this point where something that was inconceivable pre-pandemic is now real?
Well, first of all, let me thank the chamber and you for your leadership on this. You started a conversation many years ago promoting Madison as a tech hub, and that really paid dividends. We saw Brookings come out, who you had been working with for years, with a seminal report that really laid some of the intellectual groundwork for this legislation. It named Madison as the #1 metro region in the country with the most potential to emerge as a tech hub. And it named Milwaukee as the 17th greatest city with the most potential. So that was really important. But I think that what we've realized as a country, what policymakers are realizing is we can't be a strong country if all of the technology and innovation, the fastest growing part of our economy, is only located in a couple of coastal hubs. So this legislation, it aims to spread that throughout the country. That's helping it attract support. It aims to bring supply chains back on shore, to domicile them here in our country. We saw how supply chain disruption created huge issues during the pandemic. We have to fix that if we want to be strong. And we've really started to realize that in a global world like we live in, the threats are in the economic sphere and the data sphere as much as they are in the military sphere. So if we want to be strong, we need to have a robust innovation ecosystem coupled with a manufacturing supply chain and a data network that's headquartered in the United States. And we're working on that in Wisconsin.
So, and I'm glad you said the word Wisconsin. I think I appreciate the credit to the chamber, but you were part of leadership in helping us push that forward. So credit goes back to you to enabling us to go chase something that people said wasn't possible. But there's also credit to the rest of the state and to the state infrastructure, because when it did pass and it was announced, we were ready.
Yeah.
Right? We organized quickly. A lot of stakeholders came to the table. A lot of ideas were thrown out, but we settled on biohealth.
Yep.
Why do you think that was? And then I should also say, I said at the top, but just to reiterate, in that biohealth proposal, you were asked to chair the consortium that would push forward to get this funding and then what we do with that funding afterward. Why do you think biohealth was the right choice?
Well, credit to Governor Evers and the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation that really put a process together to figure out what the best foot forward for Wisconsin was. And that conversation led to a focus on biohealth, which I'm happy about because I think it's the clear strength. We've got an incredible research university at Wisconsin, UW-Madison. You just heard Charlie say that we're #8. A lot of people don't realize that that's more than Harvard, more than MIT, it's more than Stanford.
Right.
And a lot of that is in the life sciences area. We also have some of the most important manufacturers in the healthcare space in Wisconsin. So Accuray, the only U.S. manufacturer of radiation therapy equipment,
Who was out here with us?
who is out here with us
Yeah.
this week, and GE Healthcare, who's a huge part of the tech hub, the only major U.S. medical imaging manufacturer, who's based in the Milwaukee area. So we've got some real ingredients here, both on the innovation side as well as the manufacturing side, and the supply chains that ripple out all over the state of Wisconsin. So it's our strongest foot forward technologically.
And so, and obviously because it got accepted, right?
Yep.
So only 31 cities or metros and regions across the country were selected. We were one of those.
Yep.
And now we're competing. We got phase 1 funding for that. Now we're competing for phase 2 funding. What do you expect that to look like? And how, is it days away, months away, weeks away?
We're hearing summer of 2024. So, I don't know if that's going to run on federal time in August or if that's coming up soon, but yeah, we're hopeful that this summer we'll hear about our phase 2.
And so we spent time this week
Yep.
pushing our delegation to make sure that they were championing that phase 2 application. We believe that this is the right place, this is the right industry, and it's the right opportunity to catalyze something different to change the globe.
Yeah.
And do it off the coast.
Yeah. Wait, one of the things that's amazing about this effort to me, we've both been involved in economic development for a long time. This is a joint effort between Madison and Milwaukee, and people talk about cooperation between Madison and Milwaukee, but this has given us a focal point where we actually have a specific project that we can work on. I've never seen that level of collaboration between those two metro regions.
I agree.
The other thing that's amazing is it has attracted bipartisan support. Tammy Baldwin was a huge leader in this area, but so was Mike Gallagher and Brian Stile. And so this has really galvanized a lot of people in the state of Wisconsin from diverse backgrounds, and we need more of that, Frank.
Absolutely. We heard Charlie say it, but we talked about it a lot within the offices. There is a discrepancy between what was authorized, 10 billion, and what was appropriated, 500 million. What's the risk in that if we don't get this phase 2?
Well, I think the risk is that we don't know when that other 9.5 billion will ultimately get appropriated. So we're hopeful that we have a great application. We have a great team. We have a really wonderful regional innovation officer who's spearheading this effort as a lead staff person. So we're hopeful we're going to do well this summer. But if we don't, there's a lot of uncertainty, and the upcoming election could change the trajectory. So we're hoping we get through on the first round because the future is uncertain after that.
One of the things, we only have a couple minutes left, and so I want to ask 2 questions in those couple of minutes.
Okay.
And one of them is one that both of us are going to want to nerd out on. But quickly, I think the theranostics part of the application is so fascinating and so unique to Wisconsin. So very quickly, just tell us what that looks like. Why theranostics, and what is it?
So theranostics is a combination of the word therapy and diagnostics, and it's basically about creating a heat-seeking missile that can attach to a cancer cell. You can attach it with an imaging molecule that will help you find and diagnose the cancer, or you can attach a warhead to it to destroy the cancer. We've got a great medical physics department, the strongest medical physics department in the country at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. We've got radioisotope manufacturers like Shine and Northstar. We've got the imaging manufacturers like GE Healthcare. We've got related companies like Accuray. So this is a space that Wisconsin can dominate for a decade.
How can businesses engage in the tech hub?
Well, a lot of the tech hub projects are creating infrastructure, and I know we don't have time to get into them. You can read about them online. If you go to the EDA's website, you can see abstracts of our proposal. But a lot of those projects are aimed at creating foundational infrastructure that companies will be able to plug into, whether they need access to data or access to clinical support or access to diverse patient populations to test new technology with.
Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us, particularly those who are joining us on Wisconsin Eye. Thank you to Ken, Charlie, to Aaron, both for joining us here for this episode, but also for joining us in DC. Thanks again. Big thank you to our presenting sponsor, Perkins Coie, for supporting the program, and we'll see you all next time right here on Lunch Update.